All right. Good evening, everybody. My name is Anthony Frisina, founder of Above and Beyond, Bridging the Gap to Accessibility and Inclusion, Director of Media Relations for the Ontario Disability Coalition, and it is National Accessibility Week, and I am joined by Maddy Dever. Maddy, I will give you the floor and allow you to introduce yourself to our audience.
Yes, my name is Maddy Dever. I'm an autistic adult living I'm a parent of five kids, of which four are also autistic, and I think one of them is actually singing right now. I'll have to I'll have to let her know that yes, I love your singing, but I'm live right now. I'm also I was injured in a car accident. I have a spinal cord injury. I'm a wheelchair user, and I wear brown hair. I'm sitting in a chair, and I'm really excited to do a bunch of stuff with you. I've been doing a lot of disability work and advocacy so that people with disabilities have a voice at the table, and changing the way people look at disability, the language we use, so that we really have an inclusive, strength-based way of being positive and moving away from the medical model where it's all about deficits and disorders and we're broken.
Yeah, thank you, Maddy. And for those as well, I'll describe myself. I'm wearing glasses. I'm clean shaven. I've got light brown hair and a pink shirt. And hey, Jacob, thanks so much for joining. Appreciate it. Um, and we are talking National Access Ability Week, formerly known as National Access Awareness Week. National Access Awareness Week, originally founded by the Rick Hansen Foundation in 1985 to 1987. Rick wheeled across 34 countries over 26 months, 40,000 wheel strokes to raise awareness for accessibility and inclusion. And for context, Rick sustained a spinal cord injury in the 70s as a result of a pickup truck accident that left him also using a wheelchair as his vehicle of freedom. And so from in 1988, his foundation was born, and the National Access Awareness Week was born to now National Accessibility Week. And Maddie and I, we're going to do a bunch of lives this week together, having conversations about different types of accessibility, inclusion, and you know what, it's going to be great. Maddie and I, you and I met a couple months ago
Hmm.
at the ODSP rally. We've talked before. We've done a lot of advocacy work together, supported each other. And you're in Carleton Place, Ontario.
Yeah, I'm in Carleton Place, Ontario, just a little bit west of the city of Ottawa.
Awesome. And I'm coming to you guys from Hamilton. And yeah, once again, Maddie and I met officially in person at the ODSP rally to advocate for raising the rates of ODSP. Maddie, and for context, you are wearing a T-shirt that says, "Can you live on 11.69 a month?" Hashtag double ODSP now. Why don't you speak to that for a little bit?
Sure. Right at the beginning of the election campaign, a bunch of us got together. And there's so many disability organizations and allies that have been trying to say the same thing, that we really need to raise the rates. We really need them to be double. We need them to be at least $2,000, which is where CERB was during the pandemic, where we realized what the a floor of what's affordability, and so we got a bunch of us got together and really focused on the hashtag double ODSP now, because it really defines what we need. Getting us doubling ODSP from 1169 to 2338 gets us just above poverty. And that's a good first step. So we've been spending a lot of work on social media and in the media, just keeping this message simple and clear. Will you double ODSP now? And the parties that do, we're supporting, and the parties that don't, we're pushing hard for them to see the light and see the reality of the absolute um, crisis we're in. The we're in severe poverty. We're you know poverty level is 2,200, and we're getting 1169. That's 1,000, just under $1,100, just under that we don't have. And every month that inflation goes up, so this is 6.7% right now in the year, every month we lose $7 more of buying power. So we're on this treadmill backwards, and we really need, all of the parties and all of the candidates to hear that one message. That one message will be the first big step to getting us out of poverty and on the way to being able to have financial inclusion.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why we were there at Queens Park, hosting the press conference and hosting the rally, uh, because essentially you're putting people with disabilities at an even greater deficit. Having to make a choice between food, shelter, the ability to pay the rent, and it's really impacting mental health of people with disabilities, that to the point where they're actually considering MAID, which is medical assistance in dying. And I don't mean to start this live, that serious and that harsh from the beginning, but it's a message that needs to be heard. It's a message that needs to be out there. Like, if we don't double ODSP now, what's going to happen?
I mean, every month we struggle with trying to decide, what bills to pay. We end up when we don't have financial security. I mean, 1169, that's the total amount. Of that, $497 is the max for shelter. So I can't, I haven't found anything for under 1169 for several years now. But for 497, it's, even rooms now are costing more than 500. And uh, sharing a room, renting a room, you have no protections under the landlord tenant board. You can have your space taken away at any time. It's very insecure, and so we don't have the financial security. So we don't have stable. We don't have stable income. So that's the first domino of a series of things. No stable income, no stable housing. No stable housing. Very difficult to have stable employment. Without stable employment and stable housing and stable income, it's difficult to have stable food. And when we have to really choose and limit ourselves of how much we eat, our nutrition just goes south, and we end up with more medical issues. And overriding all this, like what you're mentioning, our mental health, the struggle creates mental health challenges, not to mention the lack of the things that we need to sustain us as humans causes mental health challenges. And for some people, like that we're on this treadmill backwards. Every month we're losing the ability to pay for things more and more. And it's when you're in pain, when you're in agony, and you're destitute, and you're in severe poverty, and your housing is unstable, this option of MAID becomes a real thing. And it's we're supposedly a first world nation. It shouldn't be that our choices are either poverty or death. we
Yeah,
need to we need to change that attitude. We need to change this motion that we're going in.
yeah, and you talked about it, Maddie. 1169, and as the cost of living goes up, as groceries go up. I mean, it's the difference between shopping at a grocery store or having to use a food bank. And we're losing our nutrition. We're losing uh, various things by having to resort to that. And then you spoke to you affordable housing,
Mhm.
assisted housing. The fact that 497, you can't find anything like 497, and what you can find is really, really very, very low means. It's living at the low end of the totem pole, so to speak. And where's our quality of life? Where's our dignity? Where's
Mhm.
um, the respect and integrity as human beings? Because we're humans,
Mhm.
and we deserve to be treated with respect. And that comes with doubling OTSP, as you spoke to.
Mhm. And it's not. I mean, doubling ODSP is that first step. That's the immediate step. I mean, anybody right now on ODSP, if we were to double it today, our housing would be a lot more secure. We'll have access to better food, better nutrition, and our medical health will improve. But there's still things about ODSP that we really need to chip away at. It's a very punitive system. You earn money, it gets clawed back. So it really, it makes it harder to get more further ahead. And there are a lot of things that we need that we can't that we don't have access to. For example, physiotherapy. You know, people that are uh, people that are disabled that have money can get that. People that are able-bodied that have that are working and have benefits can get that. But we don't have that ability to do some of the things that will give us better quality of life. ODSP right now does not support quality of life. It supports bare necessity. Bare necessity. I was about to break in the song. Bare essentials. Yeah, I mean, I could write a whole ODSP song about the bare necessities. I might just do that.
Yeah,
It's
that'll be later on in the week.
exactly, yeah. There's just so many different things, so many barriers that don't make sense. It's all because this mentality that when it was created, we need to stop the fraud of people, people, claiming disability when not disabled and taking money. My God, you can't really live on it. Like anybody trying to defraud the system to take it easy and living on this fee, I'm telling you, go ahead, man.
Right? Well,
Try it, live on it. It's ridiculous.
like, well, you just said it, Maddie. Like, it's disincentivizing get employment on disability because of the money that's getting clawed back.
Mhm.
It's almost as if like you're being penalized
Mhm.
for your ability to work part time
Yeah,
or whatever, what have you. Um,
yeah,
the system,
yeah,
having to prove disability now. Like, I mean,
yeah.
there's all this like legwork, paperwork that
Mhm.
you really have to like start now, and then there's these waiting lists, and then just getting on the ODSP program.
Mhm.
It's if you're a person with a disability, born with a disability, you need to start the paperwork right out of the womb, basically.
Yeah,
Essentially, like I mean, like
yeah.
because the time periods are so long. I mean, in Ontario, we're over 2.6 million people identify as members of the disability community. When do our lives matter? When do our lives exist? When can we level the playing field? There's a lot of this superiority complex where if you're a person with a disability, you're on the inferiority complex as opposed to the superiority complex. And if you're a person with a disability, and when we see something that is not accessible, the message, Maddie,
Mhm.
that says to me, it's you don't belong here, and
Yeah,
that's horrifying as a human being to
I know.
to to get that message of inaccessibility, uh, that you don't belong here because you don't meet the uh, standards of what we deem is quality for you.
Yeah. I mean, it's accessibility. Um, there are so many barriers. There's physical barriers that we hit. The simple button on the door that doesn't open, and but you can pull it open and you go inside and say, yeah, it's been broken for a while. It's not a priority. It's not putting the inclusion of us first. It's the bathroom that has an accessible icon on the door, but you can't open it, or you get it, you go into it and you can't actually get into a stall with a wheelchair. But they've got the nice pretty wheelchair icon on the door. It's the building new curbs that are an inch higher than they used to be, because well I have no idea why, but they're not thinking about including everybody. It's the small things and the little things. It's you know um barriers. It's 2022, and we've been as a society progressing through looking at all of the diversity barriers and one by one trying to tackle the isms. But ableism is something that we just aren't there yet. In my own town, I'm going to give you a negative example and a positive example of accessibility. Right? We just had a big storm. When the Jericho hit and just devastated our town and all of Eastern Ontario. There's probably between about 70 poles went down in our near area, and just it took down transmission things. That was difficult. But the day after the storm, the town announced that they had emergency center open up, and people can go there to charge their phones, get water, figure out what other supports they can get. But it was on the second floor of an arena that had no power. It only it had no working elevator. And when I said, "Well, how can I get this?" Well, we can bring things down to you, but how can I power my wheelchair? Like the emergency plan did not start by thinking of inclusion. It did not start by thinking of accessibility. And now the counselor, several counselors are like, how can it have happened that we had an emergency center not on the main floor? How is that possible? So it's an issue, and we're going to raise that. But the positive example of accessibility, the same town, we had to replace our bridge, and we decided that we're going to retrofit and rehabilitate the main street leading up to the bridge. Just get it all done 1 year, but the plan is to raise the street. This is a town that's about 200 years old, has old buildings from 150 years, 100 years, 70, 20, everything built before accessibility was, I think so. Everything's a step up. Some people have put little ramps and whatnot from stopgap, but it's, for the most part, there's very few things that are accessible right from the get-go. The plan is to raise the road and raise the sidewalks so 80 to 90% of the businesses will have a flat level entrance to the buildings. That's thinking inclusion first. That's going a little bit extra to make sure that in the plan it's accessible. And they're also building bike paths, which are going to be much better for me in wheelchairs, instead of having to go inside. Sidewalks that have bump, 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 bump are really hard on my back. So I generally go on the road where there's these kind of sidewalks, but a bike path is perfect. So yeah, we need as the theme for this week, inclusion first, right? We need to start with inclusion. And when we think, in every step of the way, we think, how can we, make things easier for people who are blind, people who are deaf, people with mobility issues, people with sensory issues. How can we do this? And that's where we need to start right now. I can't hear you, Anthony. I think you're mute. I think you're muted. You're muted.
You would think I'd know how to do this by now. Hey, okay.
Hey, we're still in quarantine, right?
We're still good. We're still good. Okay, sorry about that. And and I have a love-hate relationship with this, Maddy. Inclusion starts now. We're in 2022. Inclusion should have started decades ago.
Absolutely.
And
yeah,
the AODA became to be in June 13th, 2005. Mm-hmm. We're 2022. And the AODA, as great as it is to some degree, really has no teeth. Mm-hmm. Really has no policing of the issues. And we end up having to retrofit solutions. And that's part of the problem. And this is why, people like yourself, people like myself, are at the forefront of these conversations. We're actively having voices all day, every day. Hi, Sherry. Hi, Maria. Hi, Jacob. Thanks for joining. Having these voices at the table with the lived experiences that we have are a huge benefit toward alleviating the stereotypes, alleviating the stigmas behind this behind the lack of inclusion that currently exists, the lack of accessibility that currently exists. And it's you spoke to your story earlier about the with the power outage, but I guess my question is like it's so condescending, it's dehumanizing, it's demoralizing when you as a human being can't access things that uh, the other common person would be able to access because of situation. Like when we say inclusion starts now, where do we start, Maddie?
So, um, one of the things about me is that I don't like obstacles. I don't like when things get in my path that just make no sense. And I can't always fix my own problems. So I try to fix systems. And, it's people like you and I and a bunch of us that are like, no, we really need to, gather together and raise our voice. So where do we start? The first thing that we really need is that everything from this point onwards, everything new, every new business, every new building, every new house needs to be accessible. Start now. And then, we need to do two things in order to bring things that already exist into being accessible. We need to fund um, uh, municipalities, and rural municipalities need a lot more per capita than urban ones. They want to do good things, but they don't have the capital funds that big cities do. So we need to rethink how we fund municipalities to ensure that, yes, we'll give you more money and you're going to do more accessibility. It's providing funds to businesses and homeowners to be able to retrofit what they have, so that we can get a good high percentage standard of places and places that are accessible. It means giving the AODA some teeth. 2025 is when everybody should be there. Okay, so that's the standard. So starting in 2026 to 2030, we need to add more teeth to the AODA to be able to enforce these things. That they shouldn't be guidelines, they need to be standards, right? The building code is something you can't build things outside of the building code. Change the building code, fix the building code, amend the building code, so that people know they have a period of time that there's funds available, that we will work to make sure that everything that is new is by 2025 is accessible, and everything that exists starts. They have a plan and they have a date. In between 2026 and 2030, the teeth start coming in the different areas. I mean, we have the standards, and some need to be amended, some need to be expanded, but we've had this standard for 12 years now. It's like 17 years now. We need teeth to it. We need, it's an attitude shift. It's not necessarily a large cost. I mean, some places might be a little older, especially older rural areas. But if we're talking about starting everything now, it shouldn't it's a mind shift. It's an attitude shift. It's not a lot of cost to do it when you do it from the start. When you build a neighborhood, it doesn't cost much to slightly change things so that curbs are available, that there's uh, uh, bumps in the road, so you know where roads are. It doesn't cost that much more to do things from the start. So let's do things from the start.
Well, exactly. And when you have to retrofit, it really costs more than if you don't do it from the start. And then you're almost admitting kind of like, yeah, oops, we didn't do this right kind of thing.
Exactly.
And really that's really what needs to change. Buildings, need to be fully accessible. I'm even an avid proponent of housing in general. Like if we build our housing um, landscape with accessible features, wider doorways, less stairs. We make our homes more livable long term and create the greater longevity as
Mhm.
living in our homes rather than having to, as we get older, as we age, having to transition into a long-term care facility, into a
Mhm.
nursing home. Hopefully to that point that we'll have more um, nursing outreach services
Yeah.
available to come to us. And that really will be is part of the solution, in my opinion. And I truly do believe that if we think with that mindset and that mindset shift that you alluded to, Manny, that it's a collective prosperity. We
Mhm.
all win when inclusion and accessibility is there. So why isn't it there? That's the $1 million question. And why isn't it
Yeah.
there? And in 2022, that it's not there. It's
Because the best social service is a job. it's that damn mentality that there's fraud in the system, that somebody's gonna be lazy, and the disabled people are a cost, and you know they can get these things if they just get a job and do what everybody else does, and we'll help them, we'll find them a job, and it's like, no, I mean, our value shouldn't be based on the work that we do. We have inherent value, and that's really important for people with disabilities to get. We do not feel valued, you know,
exactly
but we are valued because we are, and we need to it's an attitude shift away from, you want to improve yourself, you work. People with disabilities, we get on ODSP because we're disabled. We get on it because we have difficulty, earning an income, or we just can't. We have to get out of this this um, toxic mindset that uh, that we're a cost. We like Here's the thing, and this is something that needs to be realized. Everyone who's disabled, that we want to be able to stay where we are. We want to, if something happens, we want to be able to, live where we are. Modify what we need. And seniors want to grow. Stay where they grow. They want to grow old where they are. And there's two things we need to be able to do that. We need we need accessible housing, and we need better home care, so that you know the long-term care is maybe not so necessary, but we anybody there's your situation can change in a year. You could lose your job, your company goes bust, then you can get an injury. And when if you got a job, if you lose your job and get injured in the same year, you will get on ODSP, because you will you will not be able to get new work because you're disabled, and you'll realize the whole chasm you're in. Right? This is something that happens to a lot of people. They're all of a sudden their whole life changes. Disability and health issues can completely change everything about your finances, everything about your living arrangements, everything about how you do things day to day. So that's part of the attitude. That's part of the education that we need to do. But I know from the very fact that there's this Canada disability benefit that's the federal government is announced, and they're sometime in the future we'll get the idea that 72% of Canadians are on board with that. They believe it's a necessity. 72% of Canadians across the country. We need to do the same thing to get people in Ontario to realize that accessibility is important. We need to know um, that ODS, getting us out of poverty is important. We need to do the work to 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 change the mindset, to educate people, so that the politicians are going to say, okay, it makes sense. We have to do that. It's a priority. And this really should be an issue that's, cross parties. I mean, it it's it's that mindset shift. And some parties are shifting that way, and they're understanding and acknowledging it. And some parties are still stuck in that social assistance. The best social assistance is their job. And until we can bridge that, or change who's in power to um, to not have that affect us. And that attitude is across the country, everywhere that attitude exists, disabled people are suffering under poverty.
Exactly, Maddie. And you said it, like our autonomy, our agency, our ability to self-govern is no different than anybody else. We need our allies to be part of the solution. Uh, we need uh, we need the support of government to treat us as people. Treat us with respect and dignity, and that comes with raising the rates of ODSP. As you spoke to, there's some parties who are recognizing that and seeing that, and that's phenomenal. And there's others who don't necessarily see quite through that lens just yet. But it's an evolution, Maddie. It's
Yeah.
really a revolution. You know, uh, I mean, the evolution hit a standstill, so to speak, um, and we remain stagnant. Um, and it's really time for a revolution. And we talked about it earlier. Now having to jump through all these hurdles to just get on ODSP, all this paperwork. Having to get assistive devices through various paperwork. Nothing is on demand, and that impedes our quality of life. That impedes our ability to get a job. That impedes our ability to go to school. That impedes like our activity in the community. That impedes everything that we do. Like, I mean, we rely on so many people to help to see this.
Yeah.
It's not just the disability community. Me speaking to disability community, and you speaking to disability community, kind of sees it and knows all that, and in a roundabout way, it's kind of essentially going in circles. So we need more people to be part of the solutions-based approach. Government, businesses, community. You know, reach out to the disability community to be part of that solution, and understand that when we build with accessibility and we build with inclusion, tangibly and intangibly, we're including everybody and everybody wins.
Yeah.
We can become more employable. Uh, we can become more active members of the community. The mental health uh, deficiency will lower because we're more active, we're more present. You know,
Yeah.
I don't know about you, Maddie, but as a member of the disability community myself, I'm not here just to exist. I'm here to make an
Mhm.
impact, and we
Yeah.
all are. And we really do need to get the voices out there to those who will hear us. Be
Mhm.
be part of the demonstration. Be part of the solution. Be part of action. And progress, momentum, holding people accountable. I know that there's like a lot of governments that have their EDI departments, but really every single department within a business, an organization, a government really should have its own EDI department, and then have that uh, report to the foundation's uh, EDI, so that we hold people accountable at various levels, rather than
Yeah.
having to reach out to a corporation's main EDI.
Yeah. I mean, just like we can, every organization has an HR. It can be the same thing. Thinking about, you know, in government. I mean, the biggest problem I think we have with regards to ODSP is it's considered a social assistance program, and we need to take that out. We need to take it out of the Ministry of Communications and sorry, Children and Community Social Services, which is a mouthful. We have a Ministry of Accessibility. So you know what? That's where ODSP should be. It should be a disability support program that not just the financial part of it, but things like physio, uh, things that will allow us to. This is the word that I really love: thrive, quality of life. That focusing on quality of life and not just the bare necessities. We need to thrive, and it's in that ministry should be able to hook into every other ministry to ensure that we really are thinking of starting with inclusion. That's its
Yeah,
mandate. That's the only you can just have that one paragraph. Get that people with disability focus on people's disabilities, quality of life, so that they can thrive and ensure this message is in every ministry. We start with inclusion. There you go. One paragraph, and the world changes for us.
what exactly? I mean, it's about a hand up, not a
Mm-hmm.
handout. And
Exactly.
why is that, Maddie? Why is our quality of life get kept essentially? By
I
that
well,
superiority inferiority kind of
it's
semblance.
historical. It's historical ableism. I mean, we we are we're only 20, 30 years away back from when many people with different sorts of disabilities were institutionalized. You go back every decade, and more. I mean, cripple is what we are. There's so many negative terms. Some of which we have co-opted for ourselves back, but there's so many negative things that are all about disability. It's We were considered broken, and so anything that you did to help the lame, help the poor, was done. You know, it was the last thing that people do instead of the first thing people do. Government stepped, and started taking over it from churches and social organizations. And government doesn't have a clue what to do because it's a cost. They don't look at us as it's a mindset. It's a mindset shift, right? Ableism, it's systemic ableism that's put us where we're at. It's systemic ableism in that we're doing our best to help you. It's you can't do it, so just take what you get, and don't be upset. It's that attitude that like it's that somehow this is an entitlement that we have to prove, and we have to be worthy for. It needs to be, we need some immediate things, double ODSP now, but we really need to reform this whole idea and change it into something positive and something that really is a support. Thrive. We need to be able to thrive. And it's really tearing down, the language we use, tearing down the attitudes, tearing down the all of the silos in between all of the ministries, even Ministry of Health, Ministry of Education, Ministry of, like, every ministry has its own little box of things, and they don't really cooperate. And ableism, it just gets, continues to fester. Ooh, I like that word.
Yeah, and it continues to be, and it continues to fester, as you alluded to, Maddie. And it just brings upon the fact that, well, you're a person with disabilities, so just be grateful for what you get.
Yeah.
I mean, you're gonna be benchmark at a certain level, and then once you hit that
Mm.
benchmark, you'll level off, and then you'll be below the level of the playing field. You'll be below the level playing
Yeah.
field, and we know we don't have a fighter's chance or the ability to thrive, as you allude to,
Mm.
because society and historically speaking has people with disabilities, for the most part, um, to live at a certain level. And once you kind of reach that or surpass that, then it gets to the point where, oh, what are you doing here? You don't belong here. It's that social status and that social class of,
Mm.
that concept of, yeah, you don't belong within this level. So we need to understand that residency is what matters. People
Yeah.
are what matters. We have to get that language communication out there,
Yeah.
that providing quality of life is better economically, it's
Hmm.
better for the community, and it's better for people overall. What do you think?
Yeah. There's no. It's a win-win-win when we're accommodated. It's a win-win-win when we have real inclusion, um, because when you accommodate one person, you tend to actually be accommodating other people that aren't as vocal about their needs. But you're also, it's that domino that I talked about earlier. When you have like all of these, all of the different inclusion, social inclusion, financial inclusion, employment inclusion, educational inclusion, when you have all of these pieces in place, right? When you have when you're financially secure, when when your housing is secure, when you have employment if you want it or can do it, secure it, and the supports if you need to be able to go, vary when you work and when you don't, you know, you end up having better health, you end up having better mental health. And so we don't have those costs in the system, but so many other people get accommodated as well. And when we're accommodated, people that have, let's just talk about those that work. When when you have accommodations at work, you're more productive. When you have when you're not accommodated, you tend to have cycles of churn and burnout, and it costs. But when you accommodate, you improve everything around you. We see this in schools. When you have real inclusion, the Ontario system has integration. Integration means people with disabilities are present in a general class. If they're accommodated, there's inclusion. But if they're not accommodated, it leads to exclusions and segregations, and it falls apart. But when when you accommodate everyone, it's amazing how much it benefits the things that you didn't expect. The I mean, in a school system, that really has inclusion. Nova Scotia has an inclusion first program. You start with inclusion, and it has to be a really serious thing to exclude a kid from something. You look at field trips. You make sure you only go on field trips that everybody can do. It's not difficult. It just means thinking, and it means talking to people with disabilities. It means actually having us at the table so we can give our experiences and we can say what works and what doesn't work.
Yeah, you said it, Maddie. Lived experience doesn't get the notoriety nor the respect that it deserves. We often, you know, are having our lives dictated for us by those who don't, live with our experiences. And if we can be part of those who live with our experiences or similar to our experiences, the world is so much better off. It's the power of allyship, working together to create that collective prosperity and shifting that mindset. When we
Yeah,
include everybody, economy is greater, communities are greater, people helping people is is truly part of a world that I want to live in. And I mean,
hmm
you know, I- our situations are different, Maddie. Uh, there's no doubting that, and we just need to put together our collective resources. Because you talked about accommodation, Maddie, for example. There's this
hmm
misconception of accommodation being deemed as extra, or quote unquote, you don't look like you need this type of accommodation, or you don't. I don't think you need this accommodation. That goes back to talking about being gate kept. Like I guess
yeah,
accommodation it can be a very very ugly word in terms of uh, equity or in the
yeah,
inclusionary aspect of it. Like and the fact that we have to justify it, the fact that it has to go through various channels, defining disability, defining why we need an accommodation, why it's there, and having to go through these mindset
yeah,
shifts and perspectives. It's mind-boggling, and that's what prohibits progression
yeah.
because we're going through all these hoops.
So many people with disabilities in the workplace really, um, they worry about when they should disclose and who they should disclose their needs, and what accommodations they require, because businesses do not have, in general, an inclusion first mindset, and we need to educate businesses. Like a comment, you need to be. You need to change the corporate attitude and atmosphere so that you know accommodating people's needs is visible and obvious and accepted, because when you feel that you can't disclose, inevitably you're going to hit a point where your the lack of accommodations is um, significantly affecting your ability to do the job, and you're going to be treated negatively because of what you're not doing. And at that point, trying to ask for accommodations, which you still have the absolute legal right to do, it that you'll face a negative attitude from you could face a negative attitude from the workplace, because while you're just trying to be like, there's so many things that we get blamed for, that if people are seeing the problem and they're seeing you're stating a need, you know, we're we're not people are not necessarily receptive to needs because they're focused on um, the way it should be, the way they're doing it, and we can't always do that. And some people have invisible disabilities. I mean, you and I have some very obvious disabilities because we're in wheelchairs. But even outside of that, there's things that there may be things that we need accommodations for that aren't visually obvious, and we need to um, let's talk. We talk about mental health stigma. We need to talk about let's accommodate. We need a let's accommodate day. That's what we need. Let's accommodate day.
I love
Yeah,
it.
we should do that July 25th. It's 6 months after the let's talk thing. Let's do it. Let's accommodate. And
Absolutely. Well,
because we need to have it, we need to change the attitude, and we need to fund needs instead of labels. And it's boggling that it's 2022 and we're still talking about this, and we're still afraid to ask for accommodations because the workplace, the attitudes haven't shifted enough. We need to talk about it. We need to get it out there. We need to educate, for awareness and acceptance, and move forward.
yeah, absolutely. And Susan, thank you so much for your enthusiastic comments in our chat here. Truly do appreciate that. And Maddie, you and I are going to do this throughout the course of this week, and
Yep.
we really do hope that the words and the language that we convey to our audience this week really kind of starts the revolution.
Mm-hmm.
Because I mean, we talked about National Accessibility Week, and it's not a it says start now, but why didn't we start decades ago? Like, I mean, just let's just end on that, Maddie. Like,
Mm-hmm.
what? I guess I'm gonna pose one more question for you, Maddie, before we end our live here tonight.
Sure.
What can we do holistically and as citizens uh, of Ontario, of Canada, of our communities worldwide, to help cultivate the change?
Okay, so we have there's sort of three ways we can do it. One, politically, talk to your towns, to your councilors, to your city clerks, town clerks. Talk to your mayor about accessibility in your town. Talk to your MPPs. Talk to their staff. Talk to ODSP staff. Talk to everybody involved in Ontario politics to advocate for change. For teeth to the AODA is a good thing. Um, Federally, talk to your MP to encourage them to um, tie federal money to municipalities to having an accessibility aspect to that. So that's the political thing we can do, and get together with other disability groups, other people disabled, and collectively meet and on talk about one issue at a time. So that's the political realm. In your community, every organization you're part of, every event that you go to, look around, see if it's accessible, see if the stage has a ramp, see if there's it's if it's an online thing, if there's closed captioning for people with hearing difficulties. I mean, look around at what the things that you're doing and see, hey, could somebody with a wheelchair, somebody who's blind, somebody who's deaf, somebody who has other challenges, are there anything that you can see? The other thing, talk to people with disabilities about what their needs are. And in your working, again, look, encourage, find out what the accessibility policy of your business is. All right, ask them, and if they don't have one, say, hey, let's get a committee or whatever to create one so that we can look at how we can be inclusive and how how will we help with accommodating our staff and our customers. So it's every one of us can step out and do something. We don't have to wait for government to change the big things. We can step out and get, asked to do the change right where we are. In our house, same thing. How can, everywhere we are, can there be changes? And if you need those changes, where can you get those changes? So each one of us can act, but we also need to push the government levels to be able to act in bigger ways.
Maddy, couldn't have said it better, my friend. Appreciate the time, and we'll be back at it tomorrow, guys. Have a good night, guys. Take care.